My entitled parents don't like my boyfriend simply because he isn't rich, and they've even gone as far as saying that I'm going to be setting myself up for a life of financial struggle unless I dump him and move on. And I'm now questioning everything about my life because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 31-year-old female and I've been dating my 28-year-old boyfriend for 4 years, and we are going to be moving in together in 2 weeks. I am really excited as I've never taken this step before in a relationship, and that's because I've lived alone since I was 24. I have grown up very privileged, and I'm very grateful for everything my parents have provided me. But on the other hand, my boyfriend has grown up in a lower income household. He has a full-time job managing a local coffee shop. He pays his bills and has never asked me once for money. He has attempted secondary school, but he hasn't been successful, and he knows that his current gig is not a forever thing. On the other hand, I am highly ambitious. I'm a manager at a hospital with a pension plan and all the adult things that come along with it. I'm also a waitress during the weekends to earn some extra money. On top of that, I dog sit and cat sit, as well as dog walk for the doctors I work with, as I am much cheaper than any kennel they could find, and I'm a huge animal lover. With all this extra income, I bought a piece of land in cash last year. It's been almost 5 years of doing the two-job thing, and I've reached a level of burnout that I've never experienced before. I work nearly 7 days a week, and I've been thinking about quitting my part-time job as my boyfriend is moving in and he will be paying half the bills. I really want to get some better work-life balance because my mental health is not good. I recently confided in my mom about the burnout I'm experiencing, and it was actually on my birthday last week, and I showed up to my family birthday party dinner in tears. I had to reschedule my own birthday party because I was called into the restaurant, and I don't really get to see my friends all that much, so I was really looking forward to it. I told my mom I don't really want my second job anymore, as I no longer need that extra income to afford my car, my rent, or my bills, and that I've given up on home ownership in the near future, at least on my own. Well, it was then that she made some really nasty comments that have honestly completely blown me away. She said to me, "You better get used to a life of financial struggle if you want to stay with him." And she was saying all these awful things in that regard, even though I never brought my boyfriend up once. Keep in mind, I was already pretty upset, and I thought that it was so inappropriate that I almost walked out. I've always wanted validation from my parents, and this has very much bothered me over the years, and I've even been going to therapy about my burnout for the last month using the employee assistance program at my work. But therapy is now turning into how much pressure I put on myself to do it all, and this is due to how I was raised. My boyfriend is fully aware of their opinions of him, and still he sticks around and supports me. His unconditional love means a lot to me, as my parents' love is very much conditional. He has been my rock during this mental health struggle, and it's upsetting that I don't receive the same support from my parents. It's almost like they're disappointed that I can't handle it, and now I'm not sure how to move forward with my parents because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Wow, your parents are super toxic. First of all, you came to your mom looking for like, I don't know, motherly advice, and she's like, "Oh yeah, your job sucks. I totally understand. By the way, your boyfriend's awful and you should leave him." It's like, whoa, wait a second, what are we doing? Why on earth would you bring him up? He has nothing to do with any of this. Like, that is just completely out of left field. So for her to say that out of nowhere is just completely insane to me. But when it comes to the burnout, I can kind of understand why you're burned out, because you literally work a full-time job and then you're a waitress on the weekends. And like, I could maybe do that for a few years, but after 5 years of that, I would probably lose my mind. So honestly, when it comes to your parents, I think it might be time to find someone else that you can confide in, because your mom very clearly has some negative opinions about your boyfriend, and I personally think that is completely unfair. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I overreacting for not wanting my ex-wife back after she's been texting me and calling me non-stop, practically begging me to let her back into my life? Because right now, I feel like I'm being guilt-tripped, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of backstory, I was married for nearly 5 years to my now ex. I have 2 boys who are teenagers, and she did not have any children. Now, there is an 8-year age gap, and yes, I know it's probably too much, and probably has a huge bearing on the situation. And she also wanted children between us, and I wanted that as well. But here's where the real reason that I'm here comes into play. A couple years ago, my wife left me for another man, and I have absolutely no idea. I walked in from work, and she told me that she was leaving, and literally went straight to the house. I asked to meet up with her to talk, but she declined. I mentioned marriage counseling, and she said that counseling is dumb and doesn't work. I tried everything to get the madness to stop, but she was bent on staying with him, and this absolutely broke me. Never have I been so hurt in all my life. I poured everything into her and I just get kicked in the teeth. So I concede to her request and the divorce goes through and I start my healing process. More than a year passes and I get a text message from her saying that she wants to meet up and talk and see if we can work things out. She says she made a mistake, but I reminded her that I gave her so many chances to come back, but she kept choosing to stay away. After talking for a bit, I find out that she is pregnant but not with a guy that she left me for. So I said there's just no point. Then a friend of hers tells me that she married the guy that got her pregnant. But you know what? I'm fine with that and I continue to heal. Before she gives birth and even afterwards, she calls me and texts me. And again, she's asking to talk and see if we can try to get back together. But I tell her that I cannot be a part of something just to replay what happened to me again. But she says it's not like that. Well, she keeps trying to guilt me into coming back, saying that I don't love her and that I never loved her. And she also accuses me of not forgiving her. But I feel like I can forgive someone, but not have to have that person back in my life. I will always love her. We were married and you can't just get rid of that feeling. But I am not in love with her. I feel I made the right decision, and it seems to me that she is the same as she ever was. Am I thinking about this correctly? What should I do? Yes, you are definitely thinking about this correctly because the way she's acting is insane. For starters, the fact that she's trying to guilt trip you into coming back and saying things like, oh, you don't love me, you never love me, you're just not gonna forgive me, are you? It's like, what are you talking about? You're the one that walked out on the original poster. Like, he's left standing there being like, wait a second, why are you leaving me? And then she's gonna turn around and be like, wow, if you don't let me back in your life, you've clearly not forgiven me. And if I was in your shoes, I would just respond and be like, yeah, you're right, I don't forgive you. And also, no, I don't love you anymore. Someone like this, in my opinion, is clearly grasping at smoke. They realized that they screwed up their life and they missed out on the one good thing they had going on, namely the original poster. So in my opinion, I think it's time to block this lady and move on with your life. At least that's what I would do. She's clearly trying to weasel her way back into your life, but like seriously, why would you want that back? She's already broken your heart once. Why let her do it a second time? Because her behavior, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate, and there's absolutely no reason why you should put yourself through that ever again. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for wanting to leave my family and move on with my life after the way they've treated me throughout my entire childhood? Here's what happened. I'm 26 years old and I have degrees in engineering and an MBA. My parents married late and had difficulty having children, so they adopted my cousin who became my stepsister. I remember being constantly criticized, called ugly, and compared unfavorably to others, which made me feel very inadequate. My father used fear and false pride to manipulate me. Despite this, I tried to brag about him to my friends. My stepsister and I never got along, and I struggled a lot with anxiety and always needed approval. When I tried to talk about their mistakes, my stepsister and mother would use shame to silence me. They labeled me as a troublemaker, which made me very angry and very sad. School was also tough, because I had to do well to protect my family's reputation, and even though I was good at music, they always criticized me. Over time, I realized I hadn't pursued any of my dreams. My father made me choose a career that was easy for him but not what I wanted. Even though I studied hard, I failed subjects that I just didn't care about. I felt overwhelmed and blamed all the time. I tried to help out by fixing and cleaning their cars, but I couldn't afford to fix the big problems, like a broken windshield wiper or maybe some dents. While my friends got new bikes and cars from their parents, I had to make do with an old car and a scooter, even though I felt like I deserved so much better. When I tried to help my stepsister stay away from bad relationships, she and my mother made fun of me instead. My mother used my stepsister to control my father, who drinks way too much and doesn't do his part around the house. And right now, with all things considered, I just feel so trapped. My father uses money to control me and threatens to kick me out if I don't do what he wants. My mother doesn't say anything about his drinking problem and acts completely unpredictably. Sometimes she's nice, and other times she's irritated and just ignores me. They both had good jobs in the government, and I just think that I should have my own house by now. They don't understand the job market and inflation in India, and they don't listen when I try to explain. They just talk over me with their own ideas. My self-esteem is getting worse. People notice that I've lost weight and I look tired, so I'm honestly wondering, should I quietly plan to leave, or would that be a selfish thing for me to do? I'm worried that I might lose control of my emotions, because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, I don't think it would be a bad idea to get out of that house, because it sounds like your mom and your dad are just not really nice people at all. They're super controlling and they're not allowing you to live your own life. And this isn't a situation where you don't have like some way of making money and living on your own. Like, you quite literally have everything laid out in front of you, where you really could have your own life and your own house that you can live in. But for some reason, your parents are holding you back and like keeping you down. And that is really weird in my opinion, and I just don't think you deserve that. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would definitely be trying to move out, because the way they're treating you is really mean and, in my opinion, incredibly unacceptable. My entitled narcissistic mother has been awful to me my entire life, and after dealing with her for so long, I'm seriously at my breaking point because right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I'm living with my parents in a city with a high cost of living and very bad housing situation. It is a small 2-bedroom apartment with 1 den, and my dad generously gave me the bedroom while my mom took over the master bedroom. And this story is all about my mom. Now, I won't get into the bag of spiky worms that was growing up with her as a mom, but I'll mention some things to give you an idea of who she is. When I was 7, I lived in a big house, and I always felt alone because my mom would take long naps in her bedroom. She was likely depressed, but after watching TV for hours, I would jump in bed and nap with her looking for some kind of affection. Well, this is one of my earliest memories. Most of the time, she would halfway wake up, realize that it is me, and then proceed to tell me that she didn't want me and how sorry she was that I was even born. And throughout my life, she would escalate to screaming and guilt-tripping over every little thing. For example, she lost her phone pretty much every day when I was in high school, and after looking around the couches, she would dramatically sigh and mumble to herself until I asked her what was wrong. She would then ask me to help her look for her phone, and I usually would. But if I ever said no, like if I was doing maybe like homework or doing laundry, she would start complaining about how I'm a bad daughter who never helps her and is always selfish. Then she'll say, "Fine, I'll never help you out with anything if you need it." And this is all over a misplaced phone. Not to mention that asking her to do anything, including cleaning up her own spills or candy wrappers, was like pulling donkeys into a ditch. She often makes herself out to be a better person than she actually is. And since she has a shrill voice and screamed nearly every day of my childhood, I now absolutely detest loud noises. Perhaps more relevant is her relationship to my dad. According to her, my dad cheated on her before I was born with a dirty woman, and she wanted to divorce him but stayed for my brother and me, which is complete BS, because she probably just enjoyed spending his money in comfort. She often bragged about how she used to date doctors and lawyers, especially when we went through some financial trouble a few years back, and how she could be living better than she does now. I have a feeling that she stayed with him because he is somewhat of a pushover, who she verbally and sometimes physically hurts. And at this point, it's too late for a fresh start. She's the type to constantly ask him to buy sweets for her, complain about her colleagues, and get upset if my dad doesn't understand the occupational jargon that she uses, or even that he can't even read her mind. If she does her own laundry, she can leave her clothes in the washer for hours on end before he comes home and reminds her, but then she would tell him to do it for her. Now, I was often the one who had to do it for her because I also need to do my own laundry, and she would say stuff like, "Why won't you help your mom out this once?" But you know what? With all things considered, I just stopped talking to her about a year ago. She has always had an explosive temper, a persecution complex, and narcissistic tendencies, and I'm still trying to deal with my own personality problems that have all come up after being raised to not speak up for myself and to deal with conflict very poorly. But I've been doing what I can to pretend like she doesn't exist. Now, we've moved around a lot, at least 8 times in my life, and almost every house we would have a period of dealing with ants. In our last place, we were fine. That is, until she left out a cup of soda or juice, and the ants just came in overnight. It seemed like I was the only one who cared there were ants crawling around the dining table, and eventually it was all over our bathrooms, which continued for several months. In our current apartment, we had been ant-free for 10 months, which I'd been pleased by, but today I was doing my laundry, and I noticed a line of ants coming out of my mom's room, and I honestly feel so frustrated. I know her room is pretty filthy, just from seeing her bring all of her food. From her dinner to Indian food to cookies, it all came down to the fact that she had very poor hygiene. But now she is making it everyone else's problem because we have ants on the loose and they may wander into my bedroom next. I feel like she should have prevented this issue by doing the responsible thing and literally just cleaning up after herself. It annoys me all the more because I had been doing good at keeping bugs at bay, but now she will just yell at us if we get mad at her or even tell her to just clean up. She'll probably just give a disinterested, "Oh, okay," especially when my dad mentions the ants, and then expect us to do something about it, which we will do something about it. But still, her attitude just never fails to irritate me. So I'm honestly so frustrated, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, your mom does not sound like a good person, and I can completely understand why you would feel frustrated living with this lady. Like, just imagine dealing with that on a daily basis. Here you are trying to just live your life, and she's sitting there and being like, "Oh my god, how on earth can all of this be so bad?" So truly, I don't blame you for being upset, and I know if I was in your shoes, I definitely would be trying to move out as soon as possible. An entitled couple always comes in into our restaurant and then seats themselves immediately upon arrival, messing up our seating chart and making our lives incredibly difficult. Here's what happened. Okay, so we have this entitled old couple that comes into our restaurant every few weeks. They're always rude to the staff, they ignore us, and they seat themselves wherever they feel like. And on top of that, they complain about the music volume and the temperature of the restaurant. We are a full-service, moderately upscale establishment that is usually booked at least 75% full on a slow night. Our floor plan is painstakingly planned, and these people come in and screw it up week after week. One night, we saw that they had a 4 p.m. reservation right when we opened, and the entire front house decided to disarm them with kindness and even give them a nice table. We saw them pull up, and we all stood at the host stand ready to greet them and to seat them at the table. And this was including the chef and the owner. One of the servers gets the door for them and welcomes them in, and lets them know to go see me at the host stand and she will seat you. Well, instead, these people walked right by all of us standing there and hightailed it to the table of their choosing in the other room. We all looked at each other dumbfounded, but somewhat not surprised. Well, I decided I was not going to follow them with the menus, and everyone agreed with my stance. Finally, after some time, the husband comes to the host stand when nobody had approached them for several minutes. Having enough of these people, I respond by saying, typically when you come in to eat at a restaurant, you check in with the host who seats you. Well, this guy says nothing and sits back down as I place the menus on the table. Fast forward to a few weeks later, and they come in on a busy Saturday night. The staff sees them coming up the walk, and we all jump in and cut them off. We say to them, "Hi, how are you doing today? Follow me this way." And they have no choice but to comply. While I settle them into the table, a woman who's with them asks me, "Well, why can't we have a window?" But I simply say, "I'm sorry, but this is all we have available at this time." And then I go on my merry way. Fast forward to today, and the entitled husband leaves a review that claims the hostess needs some polishing, and that they were scolded by me after being told to seat themselves, among other complete lies. They also wanted some longer explanation of why the window table was not available. It's clear that these people have never worked in a restaurant a day in their lives, and I was not about to go into great detail about how seating charts work. The restaurant went through somewhat of a big transition over the last few years, where we changed the menu and the vibe to try and get these kind of people to go somewhere else. But as you can see, it didn't work on everyone, because these people have been the bane of my existence for far too long. Okay, this is so annoying to deal with. If I worked at this restaurant and these customers were allowed to just run amok and do whatever they wanted, I think I would absolutely lose my mind. Like, this is straight up a management issue. Management is not doing anything to try and reinforce their rules, and they're bending to these stupid people simply because they're regulars. Like, that is not how it should work at all. A simple conversation could probably fix all of this right away, because at the end of the day, this entitled couple are literally guests at your restaurant. So for them to act as if they can do whatever they want and just completely mess up the seating chart, which I totally understand by the way, is completely unacceptable and is something that definitely should never be happening. An entitled restaurant owner interrupts our performance to try and make some awful remarks about me, but thankfully I had my teacher by my side as he humiliated this owner in a way that I'm sure he will never forget. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I was in a traditional kung fu school for 9 years, and my teacher was one of the most honest and respectable men I've ever known. In this school, there are certain etiquettes you have to follow out of both respects for the art and your fellow students. We had things like bowing before entering doorways, always facing north to take off our sash, stuff like that. Now, keep in mind, we were not just teaching students here. We fostered a family and treated one another as if we were all brothers and sisters. One of the rules was that men wore their sashes on the right side, while women wore their sashes on the left. Now, for context, I am a trans male, and my teacher was one of the few people who knew about this. Also, I present very androgynous. My teacher and I talked about it when I came out to him because I was concerned about how it would affect the etiquette of the school, and we both agreed that neither of us really cared about how I wore my sash, so I just kept it on the left out of habit, and it was honestly a very friendly conversation. At my school, we did a traditional performance every year for Chinese New Year called a Lion's Head Dance. If you look it up online, it's both intriguing and hilarious to watch because it's essentially two people underneath a large, fluffy, papier-mâché lion. We would do this for restaurants, schools, and event centers. We even got to perform for the Chinese consulate at one time. Basically, one person is the head of the lion while the other operates the tail, and we work together to cleanse the space to ensure a year of good fortune for the establishment, and so that we can scare away evil spirits. Everyone always loved these events, and it was some of the funniest performances I'd ever done. We have drums and dancing and firecrackers. I mean, we have the whole deal. I was almost always in a line with my teacher because we made a surprisingly good team. One year, we went to this little Chinese restaurant who hired us to do our normal thing, and when we get there, we set up and lay out the equipment and begin stretching before the performance. This performance was with one lion, with me in the tail and my teacher in the head. As we're talking and getting ready, suddenly the owner of the establishment walks over to my teacher and I with the most disappointed look on his face. My teacher asked if everything's alright, and this guy just started in on my teacher through gritted teeth. He originally asked why I was standing there, and my teacher, while very confused, said that I was operating the tail for tonight. The owner said that this was highly disrespectful because a woman shouldn't be in the performance and should never be in the lion. Now, my teacher, with a deadpan look on his face, chuckled and basically said, "We don't live in the days of Chinese dynasties anymore, sir. This is my student and I am their teacher, and they are more than welcome to perform and represent my school." The owner kept on going off about how it's disrespectful to the culture and how I shouldn't even be in the show because I was female. My teacher then looked back at me, looked at the owner, got a cheeky little grin on his face, and said, "Okay, no problem." He then turned to me and grabbed my sash, twisted it to my right side, bowed, and then addressed me in Chinese as younger brother. And he did this all before turning back to the owner. This guy had the most shocked and appalled look on his face, and it took everything in me to not just bust up laughing. The owner huffed and told us to just do the show and then stormed off. And just as a little cherry on the top of this interaction, I went to put on the tail of the costume, and my teacher stopped me and motioned for me to get into the head of the lion. So I got to lead the show that night, and the owner just had to sit back and deal with the fact that he didn't get his way by throwing a sexist fit. The year after, we got hired by the same restaurant, and my teacher, instead of rejecting it, made absolutely sure that the performance that night was all female students. And at the end of that night, thankfully the owner didn't say a word. Okay, I think the biggest thing that came out of this for me is the fact that your teacher is really supportive. They had your back pretty much in the face of some weird animosity, and he put that guy in his place in a way he definitely deserved. So good for the both of you for having such good teamwork, and for you to have somebody on your side that truly cares about you. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.